If you know somebody who could use some help marketing their business, if you would take the couple seconds to share this podcast with them, I would greatly appreciate it. Word of mouth is by far one of the best ways to organically market, so that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
What is up, and welcome back to the Matt Pete Marketing Podcast. And today I'm going to talk about how to not run out of content. So I have a podcast, obviously, and I'm constantly putting out content on it week after week. Sometimes I have guests, and sometimes, like this week, I don't. So I know a guy who puts out a podcast daily, and that has me thinking about creating content. Like, he has a story to tell. It's called the Total Life Freedom Podcast. Go check it out. It is a short, 5 to 8 minute long podcast every day. And he hasn't missed a day since he started, to my knowledge. And it's a great podcast. And he ties in stories from his life and turns them into life advice or business advice. Total life freedom, how to create that advice. So it had me thinking about creating content. And I wanted to share with you guys how I create content, especially when I'm doing these solo episodes, how I do it in such a manner that has me not stressing about what content or if I'm going to have enough content to put out. So one thing, I heard it called this at Funnel Hacking Live. I was already doing it. I just didn't call it this. She called it a pain bank. This is the boss lady girl. And basically you take what your clients are talking to you about and you write it into a spreadsheet. It's their pains. It's what the problems they're facing. So you have a bank of content that you can constantly go to. So I created it on Google Spreadsheets when I first started. I'm using ClickUp now. So you have a table view in there, and I created it all in there and just have my pain bank on ClickUp. They have the app on the phone if I want to ever add anything to it. But basically, it's a table of content that I can create things on. And this is actually one of the topics, is content creation and how to create more content. So I just kind of wanted to give a workflow of how I do that. So this episode was actually recorded as part of a batch of episodes that I recorded. So I'm not sitting down every Tuesday right before my podcast goes live at 3:30 a.m. on Wednesday and sitting down and recording these episodes. If you go back to the past couple solo episodes, if you watch this on YouTube, you'll notice I'm wearing the same thing in every one of them because I'm batching the content. Now, you can't do that if you have like a political podcast or news podcast, that kind of stuff, because it's obviously changing. A lot of the tech stuff will change pretty quickly. So you don't want to batch too far in advance, because if you record it and put it out and 6 weeks later you release the episode and their website has changed or their editor has changed or whatever it is, the technology has changed, then it has you constantly trying to create the content on the fly, which can be kind of tiresome. You want to be able to batch, you want to be able to get ahead. So one, creating the pain bank, listening to what people are having problems with. So for me, like things like recording the podcast, people wanting to get out of recording that. They're trying to think of a reason why they shouldn't start a podcast, and there is no good reason why you shouldn't have a podcast right now. So I created a podcast episode about why you should have a podcast. So creating courses. I've talked to people recently, photographer friends of mine. I've talked to 2 photographers recently who want to create a course and didn't know that I can create courses. I didn't honestly think that that was something I could offer to people. But through listening to my audience, I now know that's definitely something I can offer people, is a course. So that kind of stuff goes in my pain bank. People want to know how to create courses. People want to know how to create podcasts. People want to know how to edit video. I can help with all these things in a major way. So I'm creating this pain bank. Another way that I come up with content. So you have the pain bank, you have the listening to your audience, putting it in that pain bank, having the pod decks. I used to do these on every episode of my show. I just recently stopped just trying to get my episodes down shorter. But pod decks has this one deck called the episode deck. And it is a deck of cards that has episode ideas. So let's go through a few so it can get your gears turning. You can see how this can help. So I will sit down with this deck of cards and just read through them and think about each card for a second. So ask me anything episode. So you can have an episode where people write in and they literally ask you questions. That's really popular. Reintroduce yourself to your audience. I should probably do that because I haven't done one since episode 1. This is, I think, episode 40 right now, 40 or 41. So reintroducing yourself to your audience is a good one. Reverse cast. Start with the result and work backward to the problem. That's interesting. That could be that one could use some more thought, and you have to flesh it out, because explaining how to do something is easy. Explaining it in reverse to get to the problem, that could be a little tricky, but could also be very intriguing. Discuss a trending topic. Play Would You Rather with a guest. Why I Quit Blank. Interview your mom or dad. Share your bucket list. Describe your perfect day. This is a deck of golden items right here. No, I don't use every one of them, but I've used multiple cards multiple times. Why I Quit Blank. I've quit many things. Why I quit soccer in high school. Go back to the leadership element of that. Why you do a lot of things. You can use these cards more than once. So I definitely suggest going to Pod Decks, getting their episode deck of cards. He actually redid the design. They look really awesome. Get that, flip through the episode deck, use code TheMattPete, all is one word. You should get 10% off when you purchase right there. But it's a great thing to have on hand. And then when you come up with the ideas, put it in your pain bank as content ideas, things you could talk about, things you could podcast about, that you could put on social media. Having that content, you're not having to sit down and create it. I was really bad about posting on Facebook until this month. When I turned 30 on October 3rd, I was actually shooting a video for my brother on my birthday. And I had this idea. I was like, I'm turning 30 today. This is like 30 minutes before I turned 30. I was like, what if I put out 30 things that I learned by the time I was 30? So I would shoot for him, then I'd have a break, then I'd shoot for him again and have a break. That was how the flow of the day worked for a couple hours there at the beginning. And on those breaks, I went to the back of the room and I sat down and I would write out the things that I had learned in my 30 years. And I'm still posting about them. It's the end of October as I'm recording this episode. But every day, day and a half, so I'll go on there and post lesson number 18 I've learned in my 30 years, lesson 19 I've learned in my 30 years. And I've actually had people message me saying, oh my gosh, I'm loving these things you're putting out, these topics you're putting out. I can go back through and see which ones people are commenting on the most and maybe talk about those on the podcast or repurpose that content, because I see how people react and interact with that content. But I'm not sitting down every day and thinking, okay, what's another thing that I learned in my 30 years? I sat down in one day on my birthday and wrote out 30 things that I had learned in my 30s. And yes, some of them are jokes, like sniff the milk before you drink it. I learned that one at like 29 years, 11 months. That happened like the month before I turned 30. It was a rough experience. Smell the milk before you drink it, because it's not always good. So some of them are jokes like that, which gets people using the laughing emojis and that kind of stuff, but it gets you interacting on Facebook. So that's something I want to continue doing, is sitting down and finding ways that I can batch content so I can have a note on my phone where I go and pull a piece of content from and post it. But I can sit down at the beginning of every month and write out the content for that month and have engaging, interacting content that tells people a little bit more about who I am and gets me to know them a little bit more, because that's the ultimate goal, is getting to know you guys and help you know a little bit more. That is content creation, how I do it. It's all about batching for me, because if I had to sit down every day and create this content, I don't think I'd be able to do it as efficiently or as consistently. I have a friend that is a social media influencer and a social media manager. So she manages brands, and she also has like 80 or 90,000 followers on her own Instagram. She works incredibly hard. I've seen how she works. I've worked along with her. I shoot videos for her. Those 2 days a month where I shoot videos with her, it's some of the hardest times I work every month, but I love it because I get to learn so much from her. I'm trying to get her on the podcast, but she is so busy. It's so hard to get her on here. But batching is how we do everything. I'll go and record a client for her, and we'll record for that client in 2 to 3 hours, and we'll record 8, 10, 12 posts. The most I've ever done, I think, was like 18 videos for one client in a day. And that was one of the clients we shot for that day. She has it so scheduled out and so planned out that she's able to create a month and a half worth of content in one video shoot. So batching isn't just me saying, oh, I just discovered this magical cure. No, it's what pros are using. It's what pros are doing. I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you, but I had heard it many times before it clicked with me. So I wanted to be one of those other people that told you should be batching your content right now. I learned it when I was doing video production. At the end of my wedding video career, I used to shoot the video, wedding video, edit the wedding video, and then post it the next day. But the problem with wedding video, or at least for me, because I took summer months off because I hated working in the summer, and I took Christmas off and New Year's, so I didn't work basically the entire month of December. So I post the videos the second I shot them. And what I learned is that if I save those videos when I shot the wedding, give them to the couples, give it to them, they can do whatever they want with it. But then I would post the videos right before wedding booking season. So I learned that my wedding booking season started about February, March-ish, right after everybody got done being engaged for Christmas, New Year's, and Valentine's Day. Everybody gets engaged in this month. They start planning in February and March. So I would batch all my episodes to go live about a week apart, right before my booking season officially kicked off. And that had my algorithm through the roof. I was putting out videos that were getting 25,000 views, wedding videos, just wedding highlights are getting 25,000 views because the consistency had built up from videos that I had shot the previous year that I was just now getting around to posting because I wanted to have those batched and scheduled out for release. So you're probably already creating content somewhere. You have an idea of how you could. How can you batch the content creation, the ideas for those videos? And then how can you batch the release of them so you have that consistency so people are able to continuously interact? So that's what I have for you today. I'm going to head out and I'm going to go post another one of my 30 things that I've learned in my 30 years on Facebook. I hope this inspired you to create some content, to batch some content, and to engage with your audience a little bit more. Have a great day. And remember, marketing really matters. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Matt Pete Marketing Podcast. If you know somebody who has a business and they could use some help marketing and growing their business, if you would just take a couple seconds to share this podcast with them, I would be grateful, and I know they would be as well. Thanks.